My wife told her family I was worthless. I heard her say it through the living room window of her mother's house in West Oak Lane, standing there on the driveway next to my decade-old Camry with cardboard boxes stacked in the back seat, listening to Simone tell her sister Tasha that she was done carrying a man going nowhere, done defending someone who made $68,000 doing IT support while she was out here grinding. Her mother's voice cut in from somewhere in the background. "That man is worthless, baby. You can't build a life on his little computer job." I did not go inside. I did not defend myself. I just stood there in the September cold, keys in my hand, and let her finish. What Simone did not know, what her mother and her sister and everyone on that phone call could not have known, was that I was not some mid-level systems administrator working a dead-end help desk job. I was the co-founder and chief operating officer of a $12 million cybersecurity firm, 40% equity, 7 years of 16-hour days, government contracts, compliance certifications, and silence. The company had just rebranded, new name, clean corporate identity, Meridian Secure Systems. And Simone? She had just accepted a job there, Director of Operations, $135,000 a year. She was starting Monday. I had written the job description myself. Before you assume you know where this is going, before you think this is a story about revenge or some clean, satisfying gotcha moment, stay with me. Because what happened that morning outside my mother-in-law's house was not about proving Simone wrong. It was about what happens when two people stop speaking the same language without either of them noticing until it is far, far too late. Let me take you back to the beginning. My wife told her family I was worthless. I heard her say it through the living room window of her mother's house in West Oak Lane, standing there on the driveway next to my decade-old Camry with cardboard boxes stacked in the back seat, listening to Simone tell her sister Tasha that she was done carrying a man going nowhere, done defending someone who made $68,000 doing IT support while she was out here grinding. Her mother's voice cut in from somewhere in the background. "That man is worthless, baby. You can't build a life on his little computer job." I did not go inside. I did not defend myself. I just stood there in the September cold, keys in my hand, and let her finish. What Simone did not know, what her mother and her sister and everyone on that phone call could not have known, was that I was not some mid-level systems administrator working a dead-end help desk job. I was the co-founder and chief operating officer of a $12 million cybersecurity firm, 40% equity, 7 years of 16-hour days, government contracts, compliance certifications, and silence. The company had just rebranded, new name, clean corporate identity, Meridian Secure Systems. And Simone? She had just accepted a job there, Director of Operations, $135,000 a year. She was starting Monday. I had written the job description myself. Before you assume you know where this is going, before you think this is a story about revenge or some clean, satisfying gotcha moment, stay with me. Because what happened that morning outside my mother-in-law's house was not about proving Simone wrong. It was about what happens when two people stop speaking the same language without either of them noticing until it is far, far too late. Let me take you back to the beginning. The voices inside the house kept going. Tasha laughing, sharp and bright, saying something about Simone finally choosing herself. Regina agreeing in that way she had, declarative and final, like a judge closing a case. I could picture them in there, Simone pacing near the kitchen island, phone pressed to her ear, Regina at the stove, stirring something that smelled like pot roast even from out here. Sunday dinner architecture, the same room where I had sat at that table for 6 years, nodding, while Regina asked me when I was going to get serious about my career. The same table where Simone's brother-in-law Brandon held court about boats and watches and playing the game, while Simone went small and quiet beside me. I got in the car, started the engine. The boxes shifted in the back seat, clothes, books, the framed photo of us from our wedding day that I had packed last because I did not know where else to put it. I pulled away from the curb, slowly, like leaving too fast would prove something I did not need to prove. Simone had been interviewing for 3 weeks. She told me about it exactly once, late at night, while I was at my desk working on the CMMC compliance documentation that would unlock $4.2 million in Department of Defense contracts. She said a recruiter reached out on LinkedIn. A cybersecurity company, rapidly growing, they wanted someone to scale their operations. She said it like it was a lottery ticket, like she had finally been seen by people who mattered. I asked her the company name. She said Meridian Secure Systems. I nodded, told her that sounded like a good opportunity, asked her to keep me posted. She went back to scrolling her phone. I went back to my spreadsheet. Neither of us said anything else. Meridian Secure Systems was the name David and I chose 8 months earlier when we rebranded. We had been Webb & Chen Solutions for 6 years, small, bootstrapped, profitable, but not flashy, and the rebrand was part of the Series A preparation, cleaner, more institutional, the kind of name that looked good on a government contract or a pitch deck. Simone had never asked about my work in enough detail to recognize it, and I had never told her in enough detail for her to connect the dots. 3 months ago, David told me we needed to hire a director of operations, someone to build process, manage client delivery, scale the team without breaking what we had built. I suggested Simone. He laughed, not unkindly, just the laugh of someone who knew my wife thought I worked a help desk job and could not imagine how that conversation would go. So I wrote the job description myself, posted it through our recruiting firm, let the process run. Simone applied 2 weeks later. I told David we proceed normally, no special treatment, no warnings. If she gets the offer, she gets it on her own merit. He asked me if I was sure. I said I was not sure. But I was tired of trying to be seen by someone who had already decided I was invisible. The rental in Fishtown was a 1-bedroom on the 3rd floor of a converted textile mill, exposed brick, high ceilings. The kind of place Simone would have loved 5 years ago, back when we still talked about the future in first-person plural. I carried the boxes up, 2 at a time, stacked them against the wall near the window, unpacked the essentials, clothes, laptop, the French press I used every morning because regular drip coffee tasted like disappointment. The framed photo sat on top of the last box. Our wedding day. Simone in her dress, laughing at something my mother said. Me looking at her like she was the only fixed point in a spinning room. We got married at her mother's church in West Philadelphia. Small ceremony, 50 people. My mother cried through the whole thing. Simone's mother smiled like she had just made a very good investment. I set the photo on the kitchen counter, face down, not hidden, just not looking. If you are listening to this and thinking you know how it ends, I need you to hold that thought. Subscribe if you have not already. Drop a comment and let me know where you are watching from, because this story goes places you are not expecting. To understand how we got here, you need to know about my father. His name was Anthony Marcus Webb, corporate attorney at Chandler and Morris, a white shoe firm in Center City with mahogany everything and client lists that read like the Fortune 500. And he worked 70-hour weeks for 18 years, chasing partnership, chasing the corner office, chasing the kind of visible success that would prove he belonged in rooms where people did not expect him. He died of a heart attack in his car outside our house in Germantown on a Tuesday evening in October 1999. He was 52 years old, I was 17. The funeral was small. My mother, my aunts, some folks from church, a couple of his law school classmates who had stayed loyal even after he made more money than they did. His colleagues from Chandler and Morris did not come. Not the senior partner who had promised him consideration for equity. Not the associates he had mentored, not the clients he had billed 400 hours for in the previous quarter alone. Had they sent a flower arrangement with a card that said the firm was thinking of our family during this difficult time? My mother read that card standing in our kitchen the day after we buried him, and then she folded it in half and put it in the drawer where she kept the bills. She did not say anything. She just went back to making dinner, pot roast and green beans, the same meal she had been making every Wednesday for as long as I could remember. The gospel station played low on the counter. I watched her hands move, peeling carrots, checking the oven, wiping down the cutting board, and I understood something without anyone having to explain it. My father had spent his entire adult life trying to prove his worth to people who had already decided what he was worth, and when he died, they sent flowers. See, I promised myself that night that I would never do that. I would build something real, something that could not be taken away the moment my billings slipped or my value to someone else's balance sheet changed. When David Chen and I started Webb & Chen Solutions in March of 2018, we were both 28 and working at a fintech startup that was 6 months from collapse. We saw it coming, the burn rate, the pivots that went nowhere, the CEO who kept talking about disruption while the product failed basic security audits. We started building our own infrastructure on nights and weekends, network architecture, penetration testing, compliance frameworks for companies that could not afford to get breached. By the time the startup folded, we had 3 clients and a plan. David wanted to call it Chen and Webb. I told him Webb & Chen sounded better. He laughed and said fine, but only because his name was harder to pronounce and mine tested better with government contracts. We shook hands in his apartment in Northern Liberties and filed the LLC paperwork the next day. I set my salary at $68,000. It was enough to contribute fairly to the household Simone and I were building, enough to cover my half of the mortgage and groceries and the savings account we were supposed to be funding for the future. Everything else, every dollar of profit, every contract payment, every line of credit we secured, went back into the company. Infrastructure, certifications, the kind of foundation you build when you are planning to be around for 20 years, not 20 months. The question was whether to tell Simone's family. Regina and Tasha had already made up their minds about me by then. I did not go to Wharton, and I did not work at McKinsey or Goldman or any of the places where Simone's friends' husbands collected business cards and bonuses. I was an engineer who liked solving problems more than I liked talking about solving problems, and that registered to them as unambitious. At our engagement dinner, Regina asked me what my 5-year plan was. I told her I wanted to build something sustainable. She nodded the way you nod at a child who just said they want to be an astronaut. So I made a choice. I would keep the business quiet, not secret, just private. I would draw my modest salary, do my work, and avoid the advice I did not ask for, and the interference I did not need. In March of 2020, we landed our first major government contract, at $840,000 over 2 years to handle cybersecurity infrastructure for a regional transit authority. David and I celebrated with takeout Chinese in the office and a bottle of champagne we drank out of coffee mugs. I came home that night, and Simone asked me how my day was. I told her it was good. She asked if anything interesting happened. I said we closed a contract. She said that was nice and went back to her laptop. I did not tell her the number. I told myself it was because the money was still on paper, but that was only part of it. Around that same time, Simone's social circle started shifting. Her college friends were getting promoted, buying bigger houses, posting vacation photos from Tulum and Napa. Tasha married Brandon Harrison, then a mortgage broker with a loud laugh and a leased boat he talked about like he built it himself. Family dinners at Regina's house became stages where Brandon performed his success. The Rolex, the investment properties, the crypto portfolio he managed like he was running a hedge fund. Regina loved him. Tasha glowed beside him. And Simone started looking at me differently. Not all at once. Just a degree at a time, the way temperatures drop in October until one morning you realize summer is gone. At Simone's company holiday party in December of 2021, she introduced me to her boss as Marcus, not her husband. Not Marcus, my husband, just Marcus. I stood there holding a glass of cheap white wine while her boss made small talk about the weather, and I watched Simone's face stay smooth and pleasant and completely unreadable. But later in the car, she said she was tired. I said I understood. Neither of us said what we were both thinking. The gap between what I was building and what Simone could see kept widening, and neither of us knew how to close it. The gap between what I was building and what Simone could see kept widening, and neither of us knew how to close it. By the spring of 2024, we had developed a routine that looked like a marriage from the outside, but felt like choreography on the inside. Simone would come home from her job at the marketing firm around 6:30. I would be at my desk in the converted bedroom we called my office, laptop open, terminal windows running security scans or compliance audits. She would call out from the kitchen asking how my day was. I would say it was fine. She would say that was nice. Neither of us would mean any of it. One evening in April, I tried to tell her about a client win. A healthcare network in Delaware had signed a 3-year contract for penetration testing and incident response. It was a good deal. Clean scope, recurring revenue, the kind of work that builds a foundation. I kept it vague because I could not tell her the numbers without explaining why the numbers mattered, and I could not explain why the numbers mattered without revealing what I had been building for 6 years. She was loading the dishwasher. I said, "We closed a new contract." She said, "That's nice, babe," without looking up. Her tone had a certain quality to it, the same quality you use with children who are very excited about something that does not matter. I stopped talking. She kept loading dishes. The dishwasher door clicked shut. The conversation was over. She started spending more time at Tasha's house in Mount Airy. 3 nights a week, sometimes 4. Tasha and Brandon had bought a place with a finished basement and one of those open-concept kitchens that looked like it belonged in a magazine. Brandon would be there when Simone arrived, fresh from whatever networking event or happy hour he had been performing at, ready to hold court about interest rate arbitrage, or his portfolio diversification strategy, or the boat he kept docked in Cape May. I went to one of those dinners. Exactly one. It was a Saturday in June. Regina was there, Tasha, Brandon, Simone, and me. Brandon spent 45 minutes explaining cryptocurrency to me like I was a high school student who had just discovered the internet. He used words like leverage and disruption and asymmetric opportunity. But he leaned forward when he talked, his Rolex catching the light from the pendant fixtures over the island. I nodded. I asked clarifying questions. I did not tell him that I had been building secure systems since before he learned how to spell blockchain. Regina asked me, very casually, when I was going to get serious about my career. Not if. When. Like it was a given that what I was doing now was not serious. Simone went very quiet beside me. She did not say anything. She just reached for her wine glass and looked at the wall behind my head. We drove home in silence. I waited for her to say something. She waited for me to say something. Neither of us did. The erosion in our bedroom happened so gradually I almost missed it. Simone started sleeping facing the window instead of facing me. She stopped initiating anything physical between us, and some nights she would fall asleep mid-sentence, talking about her friend Kennedy's new house or her co-worker, Jasmine's husband, who just got promoted to senior director at Verizon. I would lie there in the dark, listening to her breathing even out and thinking about all the ways we had learned to be alone together. I suggested couples therapy in August. I found a therapist in Manayunk, a woman named Dr. Patricia Morris, who specialized in communication and intimacy. We went to one session. Simone talked about feeling stuck, about watching everyone around us move forward while we stayed in the same place. Dr. Morris asked her what moving forward looked like. Simone said a bigger house, maybe. Travel. The kind of life her friends were building. Dr. Morris asked me what I thought. I said I thought we were building something, just not the visible parts yet. Simone looked at me like I had just confirmed everything she suspected. We scheduled a second session for 2 weeks later. The day before, Simone texted me that she had to cancel. Work was busy. She would reschedule. She never did. In November, Meridian Secure Systems won a Department of Defense contract that required CMMC Level 2 certification, $4.2 million over 3 years to provide cybersecurity infrastructure and compliance support for a defense logistics agency. It was the largest contract we had ever closed. It was also the most technically demanding. We had 90 days to get certified, or we would lose the contract and possibly our credibility with every other government client we had been courting. I worked 80-hour weeks for 3 months straight. I was at the office by 6 in the morning and home after Simone was asleep. Weekends disappeared into documentation and security controls and third-party audits. David and I basically lived in the server room, rebuilding our entire infrastructure to meet compliance standards that most companies our size could not afford to touch. Simone asked me once what I was working on. I told her we were pursuing a certification for a government contract. She said it sounded like I was obsessed with my little IT projects. I did not correct her. What would I have said? That I was spending 16 hours a day building the foundation for generational wealth? That the project she dismissed as little would triple our revenue and put us on track for acquisition or IPO within 5 years? That everything I was doing for us? I said nothing. She went back to her phone. I went back to my laptop. The moment we almost got caught came in February during a mortgage refinance. Our rate was garbage, and Simone wanted to lock in something better before the Fed raised rates again. I handled most of the financial paperwork because she was busy and I had more flexible hours. The mortgage broker asked for proof of income, asset statements, the usual documentation. I submitted my W-2 showing $68,000. I did not submit the LLC operating agreement showing I owned 40% of a company valued at just under $12 million. Simone found the file one evening while I was in the shower. She called out asking what the paperwork from Keller and Associates was about. Keller and Associates was our business attorney. I came out of the bathroom, towel around my waist, and told her it was documentation for some side consulting work. Technically true. She asked if she needed to know about it for the refinance. I said I had already routed it through the business attorney and it would not affect our household income. Also technically true. She said okay, and put the file back in my desk drawer. She did not ask any follow-up questions. She had stopped being curious about my life. 3 weeks later, she fell asleep in the middle of telling me about her friend Kennedy's husband buying her a Model X. She was talking about the white interior, the autopilot feature, the way Kennedy posted about it on Instagram with the caption "blessed and grateful." Her voice got slower and slower, and then she was asleep, her back to me, the blanket pulled up to her shoulder. I lay there in the dark and realized she had already left. Not physically, not officially, but emotionally, privately, in all the ways that actually mattered, she was gone. And that was when I stopped trying to be seen and started waiting for the truth to see itself. The decision came on a Thursday night in late March, 1 week before Simone would get the call that would change everything. She had fallen asleep mid-sentence again, talking about her friend Kennedy's husband buying her a Model X Tesla. White interior, autopilot. Kennedy had posted about it on Instagram with the caption, "Blessed and grateful," and Simone had been turning that phrase over in her mouth for 3 days, like it was something she could taste. I lay there in the dark, listening to her breathe. Even in sleep, she had turned away from me, her back a wall, the blanket pulled up to her shoulder. The room was quiet except for the sound of traffic on Ridge Avenue, 2 blocks over, and the occasional creak of the radiator. Our bedroom in East Falls had always been small, but lately it felt smaller. Like the walls were closing in 1 degree at a time until there was barely enough air for both of us. I thought about my father. Not the version of him I carried around most days, the man who taught me how to change a tire, who made pancakes on Saturday mornings, who sat in the bleachers at my basketball games even when work had beaten him down to nothing. I thought about the other version, the one I had tried my whole adult life not to become. Anthony Marcus Webb spent 18 years at Chandler and Morris Chasing Partnership, chasing the corner office, chasing validation from people who measured his worth in billable hours and client retention rates, and whether he fit the profile they had built for themselves before he walked through the door. He worked 70-hour weeks, he missed my games, he missed dinners, he missed his own life because he was so busy trying to prove he deserved to be in rooms where people did not expect him. And when he died in his car outside our house on a Tuesday evening in October, his colleagues sent flowers. I was 17 years old, standing in our kitchen watching my mother read that card from the firm, and I understood something I did not have words for yet. My father had spent his entire adult life trying to prove his worth to people who had already decided what he was worth, and it killed him. I had promised myself I would never do that. I would build something real. I would not chase appearance. I would not sacrifice my integrity or my health for status that could be taken away the moment my value to someone else's balance sheet changed. But lying there in the dark, listening to Simone sleep, I realized I had been doing exactly that. Not with the business. The business was sound, the business was real. I had been doing it with her family. I had been trying to prove myself to people who had already made up their minds, and I had been doing it for 6 years. Regina asking when I would get serious about my career. Tasha's husband explaining the world to me like I was a child. Simone going quiet and small at family dinners, never defending me, never questioning the premise that I was something that needed defending. And me, sitting there, taking it, nodding, waiting for the moment when they would finally see. When the work would speak for itself. When the truth would be obvious. That moment was never going to come. Not because the truth was not true, but because they were not looking for it. The moral choice crystallized somewhere around 2 a.m. I would not beg to be seen. I would not defend myself to people who had decided I was worthless. I would not spend the rest of my life trying to convince Simone or her mother or her sister or anyone else that I was building something that mattered. I would let the truth reveal itself, not as strategy, not as some calculated play, as release. If Simone could not see me now, after 6 years of marriage, after building a home together, after every quiet morning and every late night and every moment I had tried to show her who I was through the life we were living, then no amount of explaining would help, no spreadsheet, no equity statement, No revelation would bridge the gap between us because the gap was not about information. And it was about what she had chosen to see and what she had chosen to look away from. I thought about the conversation with David 3 months earlier. We had been in the office late, going through the Director of Operations job description, and he asked me if we should tell Simone about the role before she applied. Give her a heads up. Make it easier. I had said no. Proceed normally. Let the process run. At the time, I told myself it was about fairness, about not giving her an advantage she had not earned. But lying there in the dark, I realized it was something else. It was a test I did not know I was giving, a question I did not know I was asking. If she could not see me when I was invisible, would she see me when I was undeniable? The decision hardened into something like peace. Had whatever happened after the reveal, and I knew by then that a reveal was coming, that Simone would get the offer because she was qualified, and David would not sabotage his own company to spare me discomfort. Whatever happened after that was what we had both earned, not what we deserved, not what we wanted, what we had built together through 7 years of choices and silences and the slow accumulation of distance. I got up. Simone did not stir. I went to my office down the hall and opened my laptop. The blue light from the screen hurt my eyes. I pulled up my email and typed a message to David. 3 sentences. Simone gets the offer. We proceed normally. No special treatment. No warnings. I hit send before I could talk myself out of it. Then I sat there in the dark office surrounded by the architecture of the company I had built, and I waited for the only thing I had left to wait for, the truth. 5 days later, Simone got the call. I know because she told me. We were still living in the same house then, still going through the choreography of a marriage that had already ended in every way that mattered. She came into the kitchen where I was making coffee and said Meridian Secure Systems had extended an offer. Director of Operations, $135,000 base salary plus equity. She was starting Monday. I asked her if she was happy. She said she was. I said congratulations. She went back upstairs to call her mother. Sunday night she was at Regina's house for dinner. I know because that is where she went every Sunday. I stayed home, made myself a sandwich, sat in the quiet. Monday morning, Simone was up at 5:30. I heard her in the bathroom, then in the closet, then back in the bathroom. She came downstairs at 6:45, wearing a navy blazer I had never seen before and the kind of careful makeup that signals a first day. She asked me how she looked. I told her she looked professional. She nodded and left without saying anything else. I got to the office at 7. David was already there, standing in the kitchen area on the 3rd floor with a cup of coffee, looking out the window at Market Street. He saw me and nodded once. Neither of us said anything. There was nothing left to say. Simone arrived at 8:20, according to the security log. I watched from my office as Nicole from HR met her in the lobby and walked her through the building tour. Our office takes up the 3rd and 4th floors of a converted warehouse building in Center City. Our exposed brick, high ceilings, the kind of space that photographs well for recruitment materials. Simone looked up at the skylights. She smiled at something Nicole said. She looked happy. The onboarding took 90 minutes, I-9 paperwork, laptop setup, building access, benefits enrollment. I did not watch any of it. I sat in my office with the door closed and ran penetration tests on a client's network infrastructure because I needed my hands to be doing something other than shaking. At 10 o'clock, David sent a message to the leadership team, conference room, new hire introduction. I got there first. The conference room is glass-walled, sits in the center of the 3rd floor, looks out over the whole office. 8 chairs around a table, projector screen on one wall, windows on the other showing the city. I sat at the far end of the table, opened my laptop, poured coffee from the carafe someone had brought in. The others filtered in: Alicia Chen, our CTO, James Morrison, VP of Sales, Patricia Williams, General Counsel. They made small talk. Someone asked about the Eagles game. Someone else mentioned a client call that went well. Normal Monday morning conversation. I nodded when appropriate. Said nothing. David came in with Simone at 10:03. She was smiling, confident. The blazer was tailored. Her hair was pulled back. She looked like someone walking into the life she had been promised. David gestured for her to sit in the chair closest to the door. She sat, folded her hands on the table, made eye contact with each person in the room the way someone does when they are trying to make a good first impression. David stood at the head of the table. He said, "Everyone, please welcome our new Director of Operations, Simone Webb." Polite applause. Simone nodded, said, "Thank you." David continued. Simone comes to us with 8 years of marketing operations experience, and we are excited to have her scaling our client services division as we prepare for our next phase of growth. Let me introduce you to the team. He gestured to Alicia. This is Alicia Chen, our Chief Technology Officer. She oversees all of our technical infrastructure and product development. Alicia smiled. Said, "Welcome aboard." David moved down the line. James Morrison, VP of Sales. He manages our client relationships and revenue operations. James said, "Nice to meet you." Patricia Williams, General Counsel. She handles all of our contracts, compliance, and legal infrastructure. Patricia nodded. "Welcome." David paused, turned toward me. "And our COO and co-founder, Marcus Webb." Then the room went silent in the way rooms do when the air pressure changes. Simone's smile did not fade immediately. It froze first. Her eyes moved from David to me and back to David. Her brain was trying to process information that did not fit the architecture of everything she thought she knew. David looked between us. His face shifted from professional to confused. He said, "Simone, you know Marcus, obviously. He has mentioned you are married, but I did not realize you were applying under your—" He stopped. The sentence had nowhere to go. "Wait," he said. Simone's voice came out wrong, thin, uncertain. She said, "Marcus works in IT support." The words hung in the air. David blinked. He said, very gently, "Marcus is IT. He built our entire infrastructure. He is also the co-founder and COO. He owns 40% of the company." I watched her face move through the stages. Denial first. She said, "There must be 2 Marcus Webbs." Her voice had a pleading quality to it, like she needed this to be true more than she needed air. David said, "Simone, we have had dinner at your house." Shock next. She pulled out her phone. Her hands were shaking. She typed something. I knew what she was typing. Meridian Secure Systems Leadership. The search results would show my bio. Co-founder, COO, 7 years, 12 million in revenue. The numbers she had been telling everyone would finally give her a real life. Her hands shook harder. Humiliation. The room was staring. Everyone could see her math breaking in real time. Patricia looked down at her notebook. James shifted in his chair. Alicia looked at David like she was waiting for instructions on what to do when someone's life collapsed in a conference room on a Monday morning. David said, "Let us give them a moment." The team stood, filed out. The door closed with a soft click that sounded like a gunshot. Simone sat very still. Then she looked at me. Really looked at me. For the first time in months, maybe years, she saw me. She said, "Why did you not tell me?" I said, very quietly. "I did." "7 years ago you stopped listening." Her face did something I had never seen before. It crumpled, not dramatically, just slowly, like a building settling into its foundation after the supports give way. She said, "How long have you known I applied?" 3 months, I said. "I wrote your job description." She stood up. The chair scraped against the floor. She walked out of the conference room without looking back. David came in after she left. He sat down across from me. We did not say anything for a long time. Finally he said, "What now?" I said, "Now she decides what she does with the truth." He nodded, left me alone. I sat in that glass conference room for another 20 minutes. Then I went to my office on the 4th floor, closed the door, and stood at the window looking out at the city. The Market Frankfurt line ran past on the elevated tracks. Traffic moved on Arch Street. People walked to wherever they needed to be. The world kept turning. I did not feel victorious. I felt exhausted. Simone drove to her mother's house and did not stop crying for 2 hours. I know because Regina called me that night, not to yell, not to lecture, but just to tell me that Simone was with her and that she would be staying there for a while. Her voice was different, smaller. She said she was sorry. I said I understood. We hung up. Tasha called 2 days later. She tried to make it my fault, said I should have told Simone that keeping the truth from her was financial abuse, that I had manipulated the whole situation, but even she could not land the punch. Her voice kept trailing off mid-sentence, like she was reading from a script she no longer believed. I let her finish. I did not argue. There was nothing to argue about anymore. Brandon stopped calling entirely. I heard later from David that he had been asking questions about investment opportunities in cybersecurity firms. The questions stopped after the conference room. Simone took a leave of absence from Meridian. HR proved it. I did not interfere. She moved her things out of our house in East Falls over a weekend when I was at a client site in Baltimore. I came home to empty closets and the kind of silence that feels like presence. I buried myself in work. We closed 2 new contracts in November. Started hiring for the roles we had been deferring. I worked until my eyes burned, and then I worked some more because the work was the only thing that made sense. Simone went to therapy. I know because she told me later. She sat in an office in Chestnut Hill twice a week and learned to separate her own voice from her mother's voice. She said it was harder than she expected, that she had spent so long measuring herself against other people's definitions of success that she did not know what her own definitions looked like. She cried a lot in those sessions. She said her therapist kept asking her the same question, "What do you want?" And she kept answering with what she thought she was supposed to want. We met for coffee in January at a place in Manayunk called River City Coffee. It was the first time we had seen each other since the conference room. She looked different, thinner, her hair was shorter. She sat across from me in a booth by the window and folded her hands on the table the same way she used to when we first started dating. And she was nervous. She said she was sorry. I said I was sorry too, that I should have trusted her enough to tell her. She said she should have trusted me enough to ask. We sat there for a long time, not saying much. The coffee got cold. Outside the window, the Schuylkill River moved past, grey and steady. Finally, she asked if I thought we could try again. Eyes not go back. Just try. I said we could try. We started couples therapy in February. A different therapist this time, a man named Dr. Raymond Cole, who worked out of an office near Rittenhouse Square. The sessions were hard. We argued. We cried. We sat in silence while Dr. Cole waited for one of us to say the thing we were both avoiding. Simone talked about feeling invisible, about watching me disappear into work every night and feeling like I had chosen the company over her. I talked about feeling like I was never enough. That no matter what I built or how hard I worked, I would always be the man who did not go to Wharton, the man who was not ambitious enough. Dr. Cole asked us what we wanted to build now, not what we wanted to repair. What we wanted to build. It took us until March to have an answer. The reconciliation was not clean. And it was not cinematic. It was 2 people learning to speak again after realizing they had been silent in different languages for years. We moved back in together in April. We argued about dishes and schedules and whose turn it was to call the plumber. We also had dinner together 3 nights a week. We asked each other questions and waited for the answers. We learned to recognize the difference between hearing and listening. Listen. Your worth is not determined by who recognizes it. Your value does not increase because someone finally notices the price tag. And sometimes the people closest to you cannot see you. Not because you are invisible, but because they are looking at who they need you to be instead of who you are. I learned what my father never did. I learned that you cannot build a life trying to prove yourself to people who have already decided what you are worth. That silence is not protection. That being right does not mean you are not also wrong. Simona learned something harder. That love is not just about choosing someone. It is about choosing to see them every single day, even when what you see does not match the picture you had in your head. Simone told her family I was worthless, but the only person who needed to know my worth was her. And the only person who needed to know hers was me. Have you ever had to rebuild something you thought was already built? Drop a comment and let me know where you are watching from. It is a Sunday afternoon in May. We are sitting at my mother's kitchen table in Germantown, the same kitchen where I watched her read that card from my father's law firm, and the same table where she folded the bills and made pot roast every Wednesday for 17 years. My mother is at the stove making greens. The gospel station plays low on the counter. Kirk Franklin. She hums along while she works the same way she has been humming for as long as I can remember. It is how she thinks, how she prays. Simone sits across from me. We are not saying much. There is sun coming through the window over the sink, late afternoon light that turns everything warm and gold. My mother brings sweet tea to the table in the same glass pitcher she has had since I was a child. Pours 3 glasses. Sits down between us. No one talks. We do not need to. My mother reaches over and squeezes Simone's hand, just once. Briefly. Simone squeezes back. Her eyes fill, but she does not look away. I watch them and I think about my father, about the difference between being seen and being known, and about how he spent his whole life chasing the first and never understood that the second was what mattered. Outside, someone is mowing their lawn. A car drives past. The world keeps turning the way it always does. My mother starts humming again. Simone's hand finds mine across the table. This is what victory looks like. Quiet, warm, ordinary. 3 people at a kitchen table on a Sunday afternoon, winter light fading into spring, learning that grace is also a choice.